So originally, I was working on my yearly box office predictions video, but as I was writing it, it just kept making less and less sense. Starting with the fact that we have no idea when cinemas will be properly open again, or when the world will be fully back to normal, and then there was the announcement that all of Warner Bros. Big releases next year, including The Suicide Squad, The Matrix 4, Godzilla vs. Kong, etc., are all coming to HBO Max the same day as their cinema release. So instead of that box office video, which, let's be honest, would have just been me desperately trying to put something coherent together when there's really no way to do that this year, I thought I'd talk about my thoughts on this move from Warner Bros. Is it a good idea? What I think this means for the future of cinemas? And so on. Also, if you want that original box office predictions list for next year anyway, here it is before that HBO news. So, my overall opinion on this, it's not great news, is it? I absolutely love going to the cinema. It's like my second home. Genuinely one of my favorite places in the world to be. And this is not a good sign for that. First things first, I should clarify, I absolutely understand doing this during the pandemic. This is a completely unprecedented situation. All businesses and entities have had to try to adapt in some way, and in terms of movies, a lot of people can't go to the cinema right now. So if studios have to get on with their release schedules and put stuff out, doing same-day home media releases makes a ton of sense, and is totally understandable. Where I start to get a bit confused is the blanket decision for the entirety of 2021. Although no one knows when the world will be completely back to normal, there are different estimates arguing that there'll at least be some form of normality returning from anywhere as soon as the summer to maybe fall. But my point is more, regardless of when that actually happens, doesn't it make more sense to do this gradually, step by step, as they've been doing so far? So if it turns out that things miraculously actually got better sooner than expected, and we still had half a year left where the majority of the population could see films in the cinema, those movies could then maybe have an exclusive theater run. And if that's not the case, then like I said, step by step, make that decision to put those later movies on HBO Max when it's known for sure. I just don't think this decision so far in advance of something that is so difficult to predict is a good idea. Then again, I'm a 19-year-old with a microphone and a computer, and not a Hollywood executive who knows all the ins and outs, and realistically probably has a few deeper reasons for this, so keep that in mind as well. This is just my take from what I understand. According to Denis Villeneuve, the director of Dune, this is also just all a corporate play on behalf of Time Warner and AT&T trying to bring more legitimacy to their streaming network after a less than stellar launch. Which, I mean, yeah, that's not that hard to believe. Most decisions in Hollywood are business-based. And while again, I'm not trying to say this is a conspiracy or something, I understand the need for this sort of adaptation right now due to the pandemic. It wouldn't surprise me that committing to this strategy so far in advance could be a way to transition to a new style of film release, and this could become the new norm. Even before coronavirus, the discussion of same-day releases and streaming services becoming the premier place to watch new movies over cinemas has been going on for years now, ever since Netflix really started taking over, and cinemas have been having financial troubles over the past few years. So I think this idea of releasing new movies on streaming services is something that a lot of studios have wanted to try for a while, especially with so many of them now having a streaming service and each one wanting to stand out, and I think all they were missing was the catalyst to do it, the spark. And here you go. Can't find a much bigger spark than cinemas being closed and everyone being stuck at home. So don't be surprised if, despite arriving because of the COVID pandemic, this is something that sticks around after it. This decision also pissed off a lot of filmmakers, studios, and cinema chains for both financial and artistic reasons, and I get that. I don't think any of these filmmakers are really complaining about right now, like if their movie was coming out next week and it's being put on HBO Max, that pretty much makes sense given the world's status right now. I think it's more those that are coming out far in the future, like Denis Villeneuve with Dune for example, where the situation isn't known yet, and also based on the fact that this will set a new precedent and will likely lead to more studios following this in the future. If we're looking at this more from the artistic and filmmaker angle, I definitely get why this would make a filmmaker upset, and even as an audience member, personally, in terms of experience, I'm always going to choose to watch a new big movie in the cinema when it's possible. It's just not even really comparable for me. Even watching older movies, I always get infinitely more out of them when I see a re-release in the cinema than the ones I just watch at home. It's such a drastically different experience in terms of visuals and sound, but also distraction. Like even if I were the only one in the cinema, I'll always shut off my phone and not look at anything but the screen. And you become so much more immersed than just watching something at home where there will always be a ton of distractions. So while of course it can be lovely to watch TV at home and movies that have already come out, or even if you didn't find time to see them in the cinema, but if given a choice for a new big movie, I'll always want to see it in the cinema. So does this decision mean the death of cinemas? I don't think so. I sure as hell hope not. To be honest, my optimistic view is that despite all of this, all the cinemas will stay open and it'll stay the same. However, my more realistic view is that, much like a lot of pieces of technology and mediums for entertainment, cinemas will start to become less mainstream. I'm talking over a lot of years, by the way, like potentially decades. This won't happen right away. But I wouldn't be surprised if, like, in 20 years, cinemas are more of a niche thing. Like, there'll still be cinemas, but there'll be less of them, and it'll be more really dedicated movie watchers who want a really cool experience, or people who miss the cinema experience, who go to them, while the norm will be to watch movies at home. And by the way, this is all just based on the streaming question. This isn't even taking into account cinemas that'll have to close because of the COVID pandemic and financial issues that came from that alone. This is in the hypothetical world, which hopefully will be real before too long, of after the COVID pandemic where things are back to normal and now movies are still going to streaming. I'm not entirely sure they become more niche though, because maybe I'm just naively optimistic, but I think going to the cinema is such a fundamental part of a lot of people's lives. Like, obviously I go more than the average person, but even people who aren't huge movie fans go to the movies maybe once a month. It's a fun social thing. It's a fun thing to do with families, it's fun for dates, it's fun for friends. It's such a huge part of our culture and has been for so long that I can never imagine them fully going away. But that being said, I can imagine the audience who shows up changing or maybe diminishing. I am curious what the average person thinks of seeing a really crazy huge blockbuster like The Matrix 4 or Dune at home versus at the cinema. Like, does the experience of the big screen matter as much to the average moviegoer as it does to someone like me who loves film? I don't have the answer. Maybe I could try to do a little study or research on that with friends of mine. But hey, if all this happens, on the plus side, if cinemas did become more niche, it's likely that the first people to stop going to them are the obnoxious people who talk on their phone the whole film. So, win? Also, a whole other angle of this is piracy. I'd be curious how all these movies being available on people's laptops in HD the day they're released would affect piracy problems, and if that's something the studios have taken into account. And as I'm writing this, it's come out that certain cinemas are thinking of lowering the prices of tickets for Warner Brothers movies and keeping more of the profits, and that Legendary may sue Warner Brothers. And like I mentioned, a lot of actors and directors are not happy, so whatever happens next is probably going to be a bit explosive. I think we're going to see some big conflicts and some big changes as a result. But to conclude, there are a lot of complicated factors at play here. Public health and safety with the current crisis that's led to all of this kicking off, the financial situation of cinemas, the artistic vision of filmmakers, the evaluation by studios. All of these moving pieces are very complex on their own, so there's no black and white solution to this. This was just my take on everything. Ultimately, I just hope that we first focus on getting through this pandemic safely, and once that's done, then look at what are the correct choices for this situation. And in the end, I really hope cinemas stay. And despite what I kind of jokingly said about obnoxious people being the first to stop going, I do hope cinemas stay mainstream. Going to see movies with lots of people on opening day was so much fun back when that happened. I love the cinema experience, and I'll even take the occasional annoying parts of it to keep it. Although we have much less obnoxiousness in cinemas in Denmark, so I don't have a ton of room to complain about that anyway. And of course, there's an entire other discussion about people's jobs that are involved in this. It's a whole thing. At the end of the day, I just hope cinemas stay in some capacity, and I'll always choose to go and see movies there over a streaming service whenever it's safe and possible. So, those are my thoughts on the whole streaming service Warner Bros. HBO Max situation. What do you think of all this? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast about movies and TV and whatnot I do with a friend of mine, it's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.